Oh dear, my earrings would have not been even that whole video. What have I done? I got these earrings from my grandparents many years ago and I still really like them. Actually, they're some of my most worn earrings. So, I said yesterday that I was going to share a story about driving around to collect something, and here we are today. As you can see, I haven't changed one bit. Except my earrings, they're now even. Sorry about yesterday. So, what happened was we were driving. I think this is one of the first times I've left the house. As I've mentioned before, I think I haven't left the house much. And it was maybe a 20-minute drive, maybe a bit more, each way. As we were driving, all these things, these memories, I guess, just came to mind. And it was like, you know, in movies sometimes they have like a flashback to what happened in the past on that road or in that street or in that time. It was exactly like that. In my head I was just seeing images of things I did in my final year here. And what was so interesting to me was that it was a very, very different experience than when I drive through, for example, the streets of Holland. Because first of all, in Holland, obviously I miss everything. So whenever we drive around, I always think of the what could have been, and this could have been my current life. Not that that necessarily would have been better, but it's just my brain doing the what if situation, which it loves to do. But also, it didn't feel like home. When I go to Holland, I always feel like, oh, this is home, I'm where I belong. To be fair, I feel the same way when I'm in England, so I've got a very flexible home, I find. But Holland is, for me, always the place I want to go back to. It's like in music, you know how it always wants to draw back to the one note or the one chord? That's me. I know that now. But this just doesn't feel like home to me, and that's not a bad thing, because it doesn't mean I don't like the people I know here. It doesn't mean I don't like the memories I have from here. It doesn't mean I don't like my family. But in my head, it was always just a temporary thing. I think I may have spoken about this before on a channel, I'm not sure. But Australia was, in my mind, always going to be a temporary thing, and we were going to go back to Holland, or Europe at least. And that's just extended and extended that temporary thing to the point where I've now just left myself with leaving everything else behind here. And as I said, don't get me wrong, this house still feels like home and my family always will still feel like home, but the country doesn't feel like home to me. And as we were driving around, I had all these memories that I was a little bit nostalgic for, as always, and part of me was like, oh, I wish I could go back to that time because it was such a good time. And for me, that's standard. That's not something new for me. I'm very used to that feeling. Am I the only one wishing life away? Never caught up in the moment, busy begging the past to stay. Memories painted in much brighter ink. Oh, God, I love Dodie. But it was the first time that I felt like, oh, I'm back. And that's weird because I'm so used to being in England. And then when I got here, it was all just being here, as in pretty much within these four walls, very rarely going out. And if I was going out, it was not very far. And it's very strange how really what happened was that in about 24 hours, maybe 48, my whole life just flipped upside down. And I'm not the only one. I know many people have A, had it worse, and B, had a similar thing. But until today, I'd never really stopped to think about it and think, how crazy is it that I literally just stopped what was happening in England. I stopped my life there for the moment and came here. Which I guess then contradicts what I said before about the music thing, because technically this is the place I always come back to. But that's just because my family is here. If my family was anywhere else in the world, I would have gone to them there. It's just weird. And one of the things I was thinking about as well the other day, it was the thought that I currently feel like I'm floating. Not in a bad way, but I haven't quite been able to settle anywhere because obviously Holland was where we were settled. Then we moved here with, in my mind, the intention of always going back. And then I guess my family's settled a bit here, but for me, it just never felt quite right, and it still doesn't really. So then I went over to England, but I don't feel quite settled yet. I mean, I do feel for a large part, but it's still not a definite settled yet. And I know that it will become my settled place, and I just need to give it a little bit more time. It's just a bit weird now, obviously, with coronavirus. And I think within the next few years, it will become my place of being settled. But the thought that's always been interesting to me pretty much since we moved here is that there are people out there, in fact, majority of people, who have never lived any other way. There are people who have lived in the same house their entire lives. And I mean, good for them. I'm not saying that as a bad thing to them. And I'm also very aware of how lucky I am that we have had all these opportunities, that I've had the opportunity to move here, to move to England, to move house 700 times. Like, I am very aware of how fortunate I am. But there's always going to be a part of me, and I've spoken with my parents about this a lot, that is always going to wonder, what if we just stayed in Holland? What if that's just where we had settled? And I don't blame them, and I don't blame myself, because I'm very happy, as I've said before, I'm very happy how life is at the moment. But it's almost, I guess it's almost like a book. I just wish I could experience, see what that other life would be, what my alternate lifestyle could have been. And that's, I think, just a matter of curiosity. And as I've said, I'm very happy with how my life, the track it's on. And as I've also mentioned before, I know that everything that I've done up until this point has led me to this point where I am happy. But I just always find it really interesting to think about. Sorry this got all existential. It didn't mean to, and then it just happened. This is what happens when I'm left alone with my thoughts. This is why I can't sleep at night. No, but I really don't, like, I genuinely don't mind it. And again, I'm very aware of how lucky I am. So I'm never gonna say, I wish it had been different. I'm never gonna say that, but I'm always gonna be curious. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Enjoy. And let me know your thoughts on all this down below, or if you're just content with life the way it is and never think about your alternate self, which I'm sure most people don't do. My mind is just, it's an interesting place. Okay, bye.